Welcome back to the second episode of an Introduction to R for Geospatial Data. In this episode, we'll be discussing Project Management with RStudio, which answers the question of how can I manage my projects in R. RStudio provides a number of tools that allow us to manage projects neatly. There are also pieces that we as researchers can do to help organize our data and create a project with a consistent structure that'll be useful for us in the future and any of our collaborators. Without considering the structure of our project ahead of time, we may end up with projects that look something like the following, where there's a lot of different files with different naming schemes in different folders that are created as needed. Instead, a good way to set up a project folder would be to think ahead about the folders we're going to need, such as a folder for scripts, a folder for figures, a folder for reports, a folder for documentation, a folder for our data, including maybe separating our data into two folders, one for the original data that then we can set permissions so that we can no longer accidentally edit, and a folder for manipulated data where we can save summary statistics and other calculations that we've done and created new versions of our data. As we open RStudio to get started working with projects, RStudio has some options for us to work with projects. You'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, there's this square cube with R in it, and it says projects. Before you've started any projects, it'll say none. Let's create a new project to work within throughout this workshop. There are a couple options for how we can create a new R project. One is on the upper left-hand side. There's a button specifically for this purpose to create a project that has an R cube on it and a green plus symbol. The other option is we can use this drop-down menu in the upper right-hand corner. If we click the R project drop-down menu, there's a button that says Create New R Project, and we can click it. Both options will pop up this new project wizard that gives us some options for creating a new project. The first set of options ask us whether we're starting with a new directory, whether we have an existing directory we're working with, or whether we want to check out a project that uses version control. In our case, we're starting the project brand new, and we'll choose the option to start with a new directory. Here's a couple options of the different project types and include being able to create your own R package or Shiny application. We're going to start with a simple project, and we'll use the first option, New Project. Here's where we have the option to create a new directory. First, let's choose where we would like to save that new directory, our new project folder. So we'll click the Browse button, and I'll put my new project in my home folder. I'll click on my home folder and click Open. You can put this project in another location, and in fact, one of the benefits of working with an R project is it allows you to create a discrete project unit where everything you need is inside that project. And then if you need to move it around, everything in it is relative inside that project, so you can actually move it to other locations with ease. In our case, I will be creating it in my home folder. I'll name this project R-Geospatial by typing that in the directory name option. If you're familiar with working with version control, these Git and R environment project options may be useful for you. For our current project, we'll leave them unchecked. Next, we'll click the option to create project. You'll notice it reloaded R, and now I'm inside R for this specific R project. In the upper right-hand corner, I can now see that I have the R Geospatial project open. You'll also note that it changed where my files were looking. Before, my file pane was looking at my home folder. Now it's set to be inside the Geospatial folder. In creating that new project, not only did I create a new folder called R Geospatial in my home folder, I also created a new file called an R project file that ends in the file extension .rproj. This file can be really useful for when you're restarting working in the same project. You can go and click on this in your file system, and it will open RStudio in that R project. As we continue to work in this project, let's set up some folders for us to use as we develop code and work on this project. First, we'll click the New Folder button and create a data folder to hold all the data we'll be working with as we continue to learn more about R. We'll click OK. And this creates a new data folder. Let's also create a folder to hold our scripts. Click New Folder and type Scripts. In addition to the data and scripts folders, let's create a folder to hold all of our figures in the future. We'll call it Figs. Note that the files and folders we're creating here in R are also accessible to us through our traditional File Explorer or Finder windows. Here you can see if I go to my Home folder and click on the R Geospatial folder that was created when I created the project, I can see the same folders and files. I have my data folder, my figures folder, scripts, and that R proj file. Finally, as we set up our project, let's add in the data that we'll be using throughout this workshop. You can do so by clicking the data download link that's in the description for this video. It may take a minute for this file to download, as geospatial data can be somewhat large. Once we've downloaded our zipped data file, we can drag it into the data folder for our project. We'll also want to unzip that folder to expand the data. On a Mac, you can double-click on the zipped file, and it will expand the data. Now we can see I have this folder inside my data folder that includes all of this geospatial data. On a Windows machine, to unzip the folder, you may need to right-click, choose the option to extract, and then extract it into your data folder. In this folder, we can see we actually have a number of other zipped files that contain additional data. Let's unzip these files as well. Again, I'll do so by double-clicking because I'm on a Mac. However, if you're on a Windows, you may need to right-click and choose the expand option and choose to expand it into your data folder. Note, now that I've unzipped my data files, I'm going to close this inner one. I'll note that I have a lot of extra files here that I don't really want. I don't really want this extra layer of a folder between the data and my specific data here. So I'm going to move all of my data folders into the data folder directly. I'll also leave my unzipped and zipped folders here. Now I have access to all of the different data that I need for this workshop. Now that I've rearranged the geospatial data I'll need for the workshop, I also need some tabular data to work with as we learn about the core features of R. To do so, follow this challenge. Download each of the following files, also listed in the description, and save them into your data project folder. Unpause the video when you'd like me to go over the result for this challenge and save these files into my own project folder. For each of these, I will right-click and choose the option to save link as. I will navigate to my project folder. I know it's in my home folder, and then R Geospatial. And I'd like to put these in the data folder. Keeping the name as it originally was, go ahead and click save. And then I'll do the same thing for the next one. Right click, save link as. And this time it remembered which folder I was in, and I'll go ahead and click save. Finally, I'll get the Gapminder dataset, right click, save link as, and then save it into the data folder. Now in my data folder, I should have all of the different neon data that lets me work with different raster and vector data for later on in the workshop, and this Gapminder data set and the Nordic data set and a second copy of the Nordic data set. This is the end of the Project Management with RStudio episode of the Introduction to R for Geospatial Data lesson. Please continue on to the next episode to learn more of the fundamentals on how to use R.